Okay, we're now switching focus a little. This year, as many, all if not all, will know, we've seen a number of key sporting events cancelled or postponed, including the Tokyo Olympics. But during these months, we've seen a number of instances in Europe, US, Asia, where sports clubs and stars and companies have stepped up to help support local communities and be active on some of the key societal issues that we've seen as a result of the pandemic. Well, what if we put these efforts on the sporting stage to tackle climate impacts and tackle climate change? And there's, I'm sure you'll all agree there's a big opportunity there. And hopefully, talking to that opportunity and that work, we're going to be at the next panel. We'll give insights on a strategic sport partnership that can help address climate change. On your screens now, you see the panelists we have: Sergey Belyavskiy, Dow Technology and Sustainability Leader, Olympics and Sport Solutions at Dow; Lise Van Long, Corporate Sustainability Manager, International Olympic Committee; Roberto Rigobello, Director of Sustainability for Industrial Solutions, Dow; and Matthew Campelli, Founder and Editor, Sustainability Report. This session is live and they're here to answer some of your questions. So do make use of the Q&A box to the side of the stream. It's 45 minutes, so ample time to answer some of the questions. But now it's my pleasure to hand over the virtual stage to Matthew.
Thank you very much, Liam, and welcome to you all. Like Liam said, for the next 45 minutes or so, we'll be focusing on how we can address climate change through strategic sports partnerships. We all know that to address issues as big and problematic as climate change, we have to work together with partners with complementary skills and values to take action together. But of course, there must be a triple win dynamic. As well as fighting climate change, these actions should align with our organizational objectives and be beneficial for all parties. Today, we're going to deep dive into a partnership that demonstrates this dynamic well, which is Dow's carbon partnership with the International Olympic Committee. And I'll just introduce our panelists very quickly again, and they'll be talking through various perspectives on this. So first of all is Sergey Belyavskiy, who's the Technology and Sustainability Leader for Dow Olympic and Sport Solutions. Representing the IOC is Lise Van Long, its Corporate Sustainability Manager, and Roberto Rigobello is the Director of Sustainability for Dow Industrial Solutions. Welcome to you all, and thank you very much for joining us today. Like Liam said, we want this to be as interactive as possible, so please ask questions throughout so that Sergey, Lisa, and Roberto can answer them, and I'll get through as many as I can, but please, let's keep these questions on topic. Before we get into the mechanics and history of the carbon partnership, let's set the scene a little bit and discuss exactly what this carbon partnership entails. So perhaps, Sergey, we can begin with you. What, in essence, is the Dow and IOC carbon partnership?
Right, and thank you, Matthew. Carbon Partnership is a program where Dow supports IOC in implementation of its sustainability strategy. So through this program, we mitigate IOC's unavoidable emissions. We enable them to become carbon neutral as an organization. And there is, however, a strong and tangible legacy beyond that, as we create emission reductions that are in excess of IOC's footprint. And we involve other organizations as well, other organizations that comprise the Olympic movement. So it's a legacy program. And a main instrument of that is a portfolio of projects, tailored carbon projects that we have based on Dow's technology mainly, and we have put together exclusively for this program, for this partnership. So we've looked at different applications where Dow has technologies that have a potential to reduce carbon. Buildings and infrastructure, packaging, industrial processes, wherever Dow has solutions. And then we found places, jurisdictions, where low carbon technology can be distributed more broadly and can be accelerated, and literally developed own carbon projects in these jurisdictions. Right, so that's the description in a nutshell. There are many layers to it. Before we dive deeper, maybe I can give Lise also the floor to talk about the IOC perspective.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sergey. And we'll talk more about that portfolio of projects going through the session. Yeah, Lisa, it'll be great to talk about this from the IOC's perspective. What does a carbon partnership mean for you and your organization?
Thank you, Matthew. Good morning to you all. So as Sergey mentioned, the IOC has set itself a carbon neutrality objective for its own operations. It means everything that is under our direct control as IOC organization. And we set this goal back in 2017. To reach the objective, we measure our carbon footprint every year, and we put in place different measures to reduce our carbon emissions. However, there is a part of these emissions that we are not able to avoid at present. It's mostly the emissions from our business travel. So that's where the partnership with Dow comes into play. Via the partnership, Dow has implemented a dozen of carbon saving projects in different parts of the world using their products and technology. And the carbon benefits from this project are attributed to the IOC, which allows us to compensate our residual emissions and to achieve our goal of carbon neutrality.
Roberto, you come at it from a project standpoint. You work for the industrial solutions side of the Dow business. Where do you, in your part of the organization, where do you fit into this partnership?
Yeah, good morning to everybody, and thanks, Matthew. So our industrial solution business is focused on sustainability-driven solutions to enable a better, faster, and cleaner tomorrow. And the IS is focusing our sustainability efforts specifically on 4 key main areas: climate protection, resource efficiency initiatives, while advancing circular economy and safer material offerings. Within the Protect the Climate, this is enabled through our products, number 1, with carbon reduction through more efficient production processes and end products. Number 2, through carbon avoidance through renewable energy applications, for example, like concentrated solar power plants, wind energy, and biofuels. And finally, number 3, through carbon capture and sequestration applications. Now I would like to connect to something that Sergey explained before and the portfolio of projects across applications. Thanks to the partnership that Lise and Sergey have explained, we are adding projects in the industrial solution space, which are key because the carbon value chain is less fragmented. Therefore, carbon can be verified with a high level of assurance, and the ownership is concentrated and very clearly defined. Thank you, Matthew.
Lisa, you talked at the very beginning about the IOC and carbon neutrality being a very important objective. Why is sustainability and carbon mitigation important for an organization like the IOC?
Well, first of all, sustainability is important to us because it's very closely related to our values. As you may know, the vision of the Olympic movement is to build a better world through sport. And a better world is also a healthier and more sustainable world. So we are treating sustainability as a strategic topic. And since 2016, we have a sustainability strategy with 5 focus areas, one of which being climate. Why climate? Because the sport sector, as any sector, contributes to global carbon emissions, but we are also more and more affected by the effects of climate change. The impacts of climate change on sport that we see very clearly today include the lack of snow, unreliable temperatures that affect winter sports, but also heat waves that affect summer sports, as well as the health of athletes and even participants. But we know that sport also has a unique power to raise public awareness due to its global reach and universal appeal. So we are strongly committed to doing our part to address the climate crisis and to use this power of sport to multiply the effect of our actions. So in our sustainability strategy, we set objectives that are relevant to 3 different levels of action. The first level is the IOC as an organization. The second level is IOC as owner of the Olympic Games. And the third level is IOC as leader of the Olympic movement. When we talk about Olympic movement, we include a very large run of stakeholders, including the organizing committee of the Olympic Games, the International Sports Federation, the National Olympic Committees, athletes, etc. So among these 3 spheres, the Olympic Games are, of course, the most visible part, and Dow has already been supporting some organizing committees in their efforts to reduce carbon. However, today, when we are talking about this partnership, we are talking about the IOC as an organization and its carbon footprint, which covers the activities that are under the direct control of the IOC. And here, a majority of emissions come from our business travel, with other sources, including the operation of our buildings or the products and services that we buy. It's a relatively small carbon footprint compared to the games, but it's very important for us to do our best to minimize and to compensate this footprint, because it's our ambition to lead by example, and it's a way also to inspire our stakeholders, in particular the organizing committee of the games, the sports federation, etc., and the wider public as well. But before even talking about compensation, it's important for us to mention that we are also implementing measures to try to minimize this carbon footprint, for example, by working on our travel policy, by working on our procurement to try to favor low carbon products and services, or also to work on by working on our buildings, improving the energy efficiency and the energy supply of our buildings. And here in particular, a recent project was the construction of our new headquarters, the Olympic House in Lausanne in Switzerland, which opened last year, and for which we obtained very high sustainability certifications. In this context, carbon reduction through energy efficiency and use of renewable energy were a very important aspect to reach the certifications, and including the LEED Platinum certification that we obtained. And Dow was also involved in this project as the supplier of solutions that enabled the building to be very well insulated and energy efficient. So to summarize, sustainability, and in particular climate, is a very strategic topic for the IOC, and our carbon management plan today includes both actions to minimize the footprint and the compensation program with Dow.
So Sergey, thank you, Lise. So coming back to you, it'd be interesting to find out from Dow's perspective, why is sport an important part of your business strategy, and how do you cultivate this kind of relationship with the IOC?
Okay, so two questions here, really. I'd probably talk about how we used sports in the first place in our projects. And in our almost 10-year tenure as a top Olympic partner, there has been an evolution. So this is actually a third program in a cohort that we're developing right now. And when we started, the sustainability wasn't a big part of the plan at all. We, however, figured relatively quickly how much more value we can add to the partnership, to IOC, and also to the company if we explore the carbon platform. And so this is one thing. So in terms of again evolution, there were 3 programs, and one was Sochi, and for the Sochi Games, and we implemented their projects on a scale of a country. So this is very important to mention. Even though we target emissions of the organizing committees, the projects happen beyond the fence of the Olympic Park. So in Sochi, the scale was the country, a big country, of course. And we looked at doing the building insulation, some agriculture projects, some infrastructure improvements. And that portfolio was, by the way, quite resultative in terms of emission reductions. And so then the next one was Rio. For the Rio Games, we looked at the continent of South America and Central America. And we had projects that span across the whole continent. So more projects, much more diverse. We had then more focus on natural solutions and did things like soil, carbon, or soil recovery. And now with the IOC program, it's a global scale. So meaning we implement projects all around the world, across applications. And as I said in the beginning, we make sure it's always relevant for certain jurisdictions. So there are things like insulation of buildings in Argentina. We introduce state-of-the-art vacuum skin packaging in Japan, for example, thus reducing food waste. We do a recycling project in Brazil. We do a project with Petronas, a customer of ours, with Dow Industrial Solutions, and many, many more. Right? We even added projects this time that are not strictly based on Dow's technologies. We do reforestation projects, and so on. So to your question, how we use sport in all that, as I mentioned earlier, we have evolved from seeing sports as a market to using it as a catalyst for accelerating this innovation, these projects that I mentioned, and engaging people. This is basically the answer, right? So these projects are all about engagement, all about getting people change their mindset, start doing things differently, change business as usual practices, and we try to demonstrate that this can be done in an economically efficient way. So we use a lot the Olympic brand, we use the power of the rings as a tool, as a very powerful tool to accelerate this engagement. For instance, we brand our events and materials when we do marketing programs. We do things like athlete appearance at events, again, enhancing the profile and getting more engagement. We did point of sales, even promotion campaigns with our customers, and many more. So sport provides to us this activation energy that is very often the critical factor for a market or for the application to start doing the more state-of-the-art thing.
Just sticking with you, Sergey, because a lot of people in the audience may think how this partnership comes together in practical terms. So once the IOC calculates its unavoidable emissions, what does that do with that figure? How do you go about creating these projects around those emissions?
Yes, sure. We talked a lot with the IOC, and we actually started by sitting together and setting targets. And we made them on purpose much more ambitious than the forecasted footprints of the IOC. So from the very beginning, we said we want to go beyond significantly and leave a legacy. So we talked about applications where the IOC would like DAO to develop projects, or applications where they would like us not to go, for example. So we always aligned on that. And we discussed the process. How will we select projects and work, like the whole work process? I think it's very important that we could do that, because for this is the kind of voluntary programs that are not based on offsets entirely. And this is where a project developer, and DAO had this role of project developer and the seeker of mitigation outcomes, that is the IOC, could sit together and align on everything and customize the portfolio. Yes, so portfolio in the end looks exactly like the IOC wanted to see it. They have this direct influence, and so to projects that contribute to their carbon neutrality. So this is one thing. Then secondly, we went out to a very diverse and truly global DAO's customer base. And from that outreach, we had numerous ideas. So then with these ideas, we needed to filter them down and select the strongest ones. For that, we have very good partners. So we work with companies like Nature Bank, South Pole, ERM, and those who are in this whole environment of carbon and sustainability would know these names quite well. So they helped us to assess the ideas and check the feasibility. And so we wanted to say, okay, this might work, this probably will not work. And so we had feasibility checks on all these ideas. We have filtered that this a big amount into a quite focused portfolio of customized projects. And and then we aligned, we had the final alignment always with the IOC. And when this is obtained, we go and we implement projects. Right, so then there is the whole implementation part, which is a completely different thing. And this is always a stage where some things still do not work. Yes, so not everything worked in this portfolio. And this is normal, totally, because I think because we always challenge the status quo, we want to go beyond business as usual. So certain failure rate is possible. So we can, but because we use the portfolio, we can still meet our goals, let alone the commitments with the IOC. And basically the results are quite good in the end. So sometimes, as I mentioned, we see that the carbon benefits would be limited. So it doesn't make sense to invest in verification, for example. And so then we just would put it aside and not do it. But overall, the portfolio performed quite well. I think even more than just showing the results, it's important to communicate about that, because we wanted to set an example. We wanted to set a benchmark for the voluntary carbon program. So for instance, in some weeks, we expect to issue a next iteration of our carbon report that talks about all the 3 programs and all the projects, and more importantly, about all the learnings that we had from these projects. So we want always to share it very transparently with our stakeholders. So again, to distribute this knowledge a bit wider. So looking forward to sharing this all in the report and having very broad audiences take a look at it very soon.
Thanks, Sergey. So Roberto, Sergey talks about a very kind of extensive portfolio in many areas of business, from built environment to packaging to industrial. But perhaps we can distill this a little bit more for the audience and talk about, a particular project or a particular field that you've worked in to really kind of showcase what a project looks like.
Yes, and I would like to pick one that Sergey mentioned before among the several ones. And so today I would like to talk about a project that demonstrates that the adoption of an advantaged catalyst in our customer Petronas world-scale ethylene oxide plant can result in an increase in plant performance. And this is due to more effective reduction in energy intensity and carbon emissions because of a higher performance catalyst. And Petronas Chemicals Glycols is the first carbon savings contributor to the official carbon partnership between Dow and the International Olympic Committee. Let me give you some background. Ethylene oxide is one of the most important chemical raw materials because it's essential for the manufacturing processes of diverse consumer goods. For example, textiles, detergents, and polyurethane-based products. Indeed, the ethylene oxide production process is energy intensive and creates direct CO2 emissions, making it critical to deploy a transformative technology that goes beyond business as usual. So Dow developed the most effective technology for ethylene oxide reaction catalyst to increase the performance and the reliability of the ethylene oxide production process while helping to reduce energy consumption and CO2 emissions. So now imagine a road with thousands of less cars driving on it each year. And this is how much energy consumption and CO2 emissions are avoided when using our Meteor EO Retro 2000 catalyst to make ethylene oxide compared to other catalysts available today for a typical world-scale plant. Now, the beauty of this project on the top is that Dow and Petronas are working together with a third party to verify the results of the reduced carbon emissions. Finally, as Lise mentioned before, the carbon savings have been attributed to the Dow IOC partnership to mitigate the IOC carbon footprint. Moreover, I would like to mention that the Dow MR 2000 catalyst is used successfully at several Dow and Dow Venture EO plants. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Roberto. Lise, I suppose there are a couple of ways for organizations to mitigate their unavoidable carbon emissions. I think offsetting is probably the most common way to do it. This project is very much about, looking at sustainable technologies, low carbon innovations to mitigate these emissions. From an IOC point of view, why was this partnership with Dow kind of the most beneficial way that you could mitigate these emissions? What was the appeal and what was the driver?
First of all, Dow is a very long-standing partner of the Olympic movement, and they have been very proactive in the field of sustainability these last few years in the collaboration with the IOC, especially since the development of our sustainability strategy back in 2015. And when we were developing this strategy, we consulted a wide range of stakeholders, including our commercial partners. We tried really to engage with our commercial partners as much as possible to establish some meaningful and innovative collaborations that can bring sustainable changes and that can benefit to both parties. So that's in this context that we engage with Dow in order to leverage the full potential of our brand. So during the development of the strategy, Dow came with this idea of implementing a carbon mitigation program to compensate the IOC's carbon footprint. And this idea was to build on their experience working on other carbon mitigation programs for previous Olympic Games. So the idea was to adapt this type of mitigation program to the IOC as an organization. So we decided to establish this partnership with Dow, in which Dow brings their expertise and their technology to help reduce carbon, and in which the IOC provides the global platform of sports that help raise the visibility of low carbon solutions in different sectors. And overall, we realized that the fact of combining the expertise of Dow and the power of the Olympic brand can bring us a lot of mutual benefits, and it pushes us to go beyond what we could do alone. It pushes us to broaden our impact. It pushes us to be also more innovative in our way of working, like, for example, developing new methodologies for carbon reduction. So there are a lot of mutual benefits of this partnership.
Quick word for the audience. We've got just over 15 minutes left of this panel, so please feel free to get as many questions in as possible, and I'll try and get through them. Roberto, let's come back to you, because you're the Director of Sustainability for Dow Industrial Solutions. How does this partnership align with your own business unit and its own organizational goals and objectives?
Yes, so this partnership is enabling to further engage current and potential users of the Meteor Retro 2000 catalyst, which can be used in conventional oxygen-based ethylene oxide plants to achieve the sustainable positive benefits. And I would like to add an example. In 2018, we launched the Dow Carbon Challenge Contest to incentivize ethylene oxide producers to adopt MR2000 and to encourage that all users of the catalyst strive for a better plant performance to reduce carbon emissions. The 3 winners will be soon announced, and they will receive a climate impact report which quantifies the carbon reduction of their performance.
Thank you, Roberto. We've got a couple of questions from the audience here. First one is for you, Sergey, and this is from Leah. And she asks, Sergey, what criteria is most important for you to choose the projects to remove the carbon emissions? So how do you go about choosing the projects for the portfolio?
Thank you. Yeah, so I already talked a little bit how the alignment with the IOC goals. So the applications are important. This should be the applications where Dow has technologies. And then again, we have to find jurisdictions where we could push it beyond business as usual. So this is key. Now, some other metrics include, first of all, the significance. We always try to work with also with Dow's marketing to understand what is the potential of that beyond business as usual, what is the size of it. And then we can calculate it somehow and for into carbon emission reductions and forecast how significant the project would be. So when we are speaking about hundreds of thousands of tons as in terms of the goals of this partnership, so we couldn't afford making small projects. We had to only go for significant. Yeah, like Roberto mentioned here, just one industrial improvement can result in inputs that rival thousands, taking thousands of cars off the road, and so on. So yeah, then we also it had to be valuable applications for Dow, because this is not in the last place a business program for us, a program that allows us to accelerate our technology. So this was important, and then, of course, addressing the world's biggest challenges, such as decarbonization. Yeah, so insulating houses better, decarbonizing the building sector through this program, or things like food waste, reducing food waste through more sustainable packaging, finding or promoting solutions for recycling of plastics. We now are about to launch a very significant recycling project in Brazil, promoting solutions that make plastics more recyclable. And so we built a portfolio. So that was a bit of a challenge to put it all together, but these are the key metrics that we have employed.
Fantastic. We've got another question here, and this one is more, I suppose, more future gazing, and we can come to this slightly later, and maybe we can think about this one. So this is a question for Roberto and Sergey, and the question is: are you looking to scale this partnership up or work across other sporting events, potentially a sport, an area that you can look at potentially beyond this partnership? But before we come to that, I'd like to stay with you, Sergey, because you talk about the carbon reductions that you've achieved through this project. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of carbon reductions you've achieved and how you go about verifying these reductions?
Mm-hmm. All right. So I mentioned already the scale. It's hundreds of thousands. Yeah. So that we wanted to achieve. And again, I mentioned the report that is coming out there. We would put some more precise numbers. Yeah. So that I don't go into details right now. In terms of the verification, we really deployed the best practices of carbon accounting. First of all, we developed a framework even before the Sochi Games, a framework to mitigate climate impacts of events. Very focused. We based it on existing standards like ISO and Greenhouse Gas Protocol, VCS and Gold Standard. However, that we really focused it on events. And we use that as our methodology for all the programs starting from Sochi. So the key principle is beyond business as usual, as I mentioned. So we validate that any greenhouse gas emission reductions that we claim, any removals wouldn't have occurred in absence of a project. Right. So for every project, we write a project idea note that undergoes the feasibility check. We write a project document or a PDD, sometimes it's called. It's a detailed project plan with the methodology for accounting of carbon benefits. So project description, identification of sinks, sources and reservoirs, collection of data, monitoring of data. So all these things, when we do product comparison, we do LCAs, of course. And so this PDD gets validated by ERM, that is an independent third auditor for our projects. And when the project is validated, we can conduct verifications periodically. So we gather the data, we submit the monitoring reports according to the monitoring plan, and this is what gets verified, again by ERM. And then we maintain a sort of a dashboard where all these results are assembled, and these are the results of the program. So that's more or less in a nutshell the process.
We have a question for Lise here from Joseph, who's asking, with the IOC's power, are you able to advocate for all partners to align with key climate targets? So maybe this alludes to the fact that you talked about the kind of the Olympic movement at the very beginning of the conversation.
Mm-hmm. So today we are reviewing our climate strategy, but I can explain you what we do today and what we are planning to do in the future. So today, for example, first of all, for the organizing committees of Olympic Games, there is an obligation to measure the footprint of the games, to reduce as much as possible, and to compensate emissions under the direct control of the organizing committees. In the future, our requirement for Olympic Games will be for them to be climate positive, and this will apply by 2030. And we are now developing the different steps to explain what climate positive means, but basically it will include measuring the footprint, reducing in line with climate science. So you mentioned SBT, so yes, that will be a reduction that should be in line with climate science, and then compensating residual emissions, as well as using the influence of the games to try to encourage reductions among their stakeholders. So that's for the games. Then there is the Olympic movement, especially the work we do with sports federations and national Olympic committees. So today we encourage them and we incentivize all the stakeholders to join the UN Sport for Climate Action Framework. So it's an initiative that we launched in partnership with UN Climate. And through joining this framework, the organizations make a pledge at measuring their carbon footprint, taking measures to reduce, and advocating also for climate action. And the IOC, together with the UN Climate Organization, provides some tools for carbon measurement, and also organizes some trainings and workshops to help all these sports organizations. So today, this is really the key tool that we have for the Olympic movement to take action on climate. I think there are over 100 signatories today, and we are going to continue to encourage sports organizations to join this framework.
Roberto, you talked a little while ago about the fact that this partnership aligns very much with the objectives, the sustainability objectives of Dow Industrial Solutions. Can you give us a flavour of any other kind of projects or partnerships that you're working on that in a similar vein to this?
Absolutely, absolutely. And let me connect this to renewable energy. And specifically, first of all, let me mention that Dow is the #1 user of clean energy in the chemical industry. And by the way, we rank among the top 25 global corporations in terms of renewable power use. Going back to the same area and an example where Dow Industrial Solution is enabling renewable energy is that we were awarded the Dubai Electricity and Water Authority concentrated solar power project, which will use our Dow term heat transfer fluids to enable renewable energy for 270,000 homes in Dubai. And just to give you an idea, Matthew, this project will help avoid 1.4 million metric tons of CO2 emissions every year. Now, the Dow Term A heat transfer fluid is used over 40 large-scale concentrated solar power plants around the world. And these plants provide an alternative to non-renewable energy. To further expand on these efforts, an example I made, we are teaming up with a partner in Europe to regenerate the degraded heat transfer fluid back into a high-quality product. This means our customers can reuse the regenerated heat transfer fluid with the benefit of circular materials inputs, thus reducing waste, and again, reconnecting with a further impact to carbon avoidance. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you. We have a question from Matthew Hoberig's, which is quite a detailed one and goes a little bit beyond the scope of today's conversation, which is around finding sustainable solutions for non-degradable polluting plastics. We can forward that question on to Sergey and Roberto, who can get back to you, or you can catch them afterwards to discuss this, because we're coming to the last sort of 7 or 8 minutes now. This partnership is mainly about this panel is mainly about partnerships and the impact of partnerships when taking on issues like climate change. And Sergey, there'll be people in the audience who will want to find ways to work more holistically with existing partners, develop those relationships in the same way that you have with the IOC. What kind of 2 or 3 tips can you give them about how to develop these partnerships and cultivate them in the same way and create something a bit stronger than they have already?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so, well, maybe I'll shortly address the question, because this is an important question, of course, and there is a lot happening in the industry and also at Dow in terms of technology. How do we enable recyclability through packaging design? How we enable use of recycled feedstock. Dow has made a pledge on the recyclability side by 2030 that all our materials that we put to market are fully recyclable. So a lot is going on, and the issue is always the scale. Yeah, how do we scale it up to a significant size? And our program with the IOC is actually a way to try to do it. So to take the initiatives and try to accelerate them across different applications. So, but this is a big topic, of course, and we don't have time to cover it entirely. Now, on this kind of programs, this is going forward. I think this is very interesting because it's a voluntary program, and as such, it depends on all the discussions around Article 6 and the Paris Agreement and how the voluntary markets will look like in future. So, I think that it will become more difficult to do such kind of programs going forward, it might become more difficult for a number of good reasons, actually, because I mentioned we always compare to a baseline, and these baselines are becoming more and more dynamic. And this has to be tracked. For example, let's take insulation. If our business as usual is not insulating, we always need to prove that this is still the case, that the houses are built with low insulation. And if this is not the case, it means the houses are better insulated. We cannot do the monitoring, we cannot deliver the results anymore. This is good for the environment, not so good for the program. Again, the grids decarbonize. When we count electricity or reductions in electricity consumption, and then we cannot do it long term if the grid becomes greener, uses more renewable energy, then the reductions would be reduced. And then last but not least, carbon gets more and more value. So it will become more difficult for Dow going forward to allocate these results to a program with the IOC because customers want to hold on to them. So we already have to shorten the attribution timelines in our carbon agreements, right? And last but not least, there will be more focus on natural solutions going forward and on removals, because these two things are becoming more and more loudly spoken in sustainability. So we have observed these dynamics in Sochi. We're happy about it and excited to be moving forward and exploring maybe some new innovative mechanisms for voluntary programs.
So Roberto, Sergey's talked a little bit about some of the future ideas for Dow Olympic and Sports Solutions. Lise talked about the fact that the IOC is looking to climate positivity to go beyond the climate neutrality. What kind of things are you looking at with Dow Industrial Solutions going forward with regards to climate action? What kind of plans or ideas or objectives have you got?
Yes, so first of all, I would like to mention that these kind of projects and partnership are a great way for businesses to engage with customers and value chains to accelerate the implementation of the project and the positive impact to sustainability, which is, by the way, measured and verified by external partners. And we do offer solutions that go in the direction of carbon reduction for the efficiency of production, as I mentioned before. I touch base the renewable energy applications with carbon avoidance, but as well wind energy and biofuels, enabling biofuels. And finally, a point that Sergey mentioned before, our business is a full platform of carbon capture and sequestration applications, which is becoming more and more important for what has been explained earlier by Sergey, just to give you a few examples.
We're moving into the last 2 or 3 minutes of the session now. So let's talk about kind of key takeaways and learnings from the from this project. Lise, perhaps let's start with you. What were the kind of key things that you learned throughout this partnership with Dow, and what are the kind of key takeaways that you can provide to the people in the audience listening today?
So this partnership has been a great way for us to achieve our carbon neutrality commitment in a collaboration with a commercial partner and in an innovative manner. And we've seen it as a great way also to use the brand to drive positive changes in different industry sectors. So the overall result for us of the partnership is that IOC emissions, in fact, were slightly lower than what we initially predicted, which is great. And at the same time, Dow has exceeded their initial target in terms of carbon reduction. So this program overall is creating a significant excess of carbon credits and is creating also a positive legacy in different sectors. So today we think it's really a program that has helped us to be on the right track to contribute to the Paris Agreement on climate. And as I was mentioning earlier, now we think we need to go even beyond carbon neutrality. So our next challenge will be to move to climate positivity.
Roberto, key takeaways and learnings from you.
Sorry, I was on mute. So no, for me, the key takeaway and definitely the learning is the great way for business to engage with customers thanks to this partnership and how we can accelerate implementation of the projects. This is definitely the most important one to make a positive impact to sustainability. And as I mentioned before, as well, the possibility, by the way, to verify externally the impact on CO2. I think this is definitely for the business the greatest takeaway. Thanks, Matthew.
Thank you, Roberto. And the last word with you, Sergey.
Thanks, Matthew, and thank you, Lise and Roberto. I think a lot has already been mentioned in terms of learnings. Maybe I'll just say one last thing as we close. So we at Dow and our kind of industry, we're heavy lifters in terms of carbon. Yes, so to get things to use by the value chain and materials to use by the value chain, we have to spend a lot of energy to convert some basic feedstock into the materials. Yeah, in the same, and this is our challenge that we're trying to overcome. In the same time, these are also the solutions that help the value chains to decarbonize. And this is how we see our mission, is to deliver products that have these carbon benefits to our customers, to value chains, and to consumers. And this program is a great lens to demonstrate it in the first place. And as Roberto mentioned, a great way to engage with our customers and build new partnerships and collaborations on the platform of sustainability.
Thank you very much, Sergey. That's all we have time for today. Thank you very much to everyone in the audience for devoting some time and attention to our session and for asking some really important questions. And a big thank you to our panelists, Sergey Belyavskiy, Lise Van Long, and Roberto Rigobello for giving us a lot of value this morning. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, guys. And thank you to you, Matthew, for chairing the discussion. Take care, guys. Okay. Bye-bye. Okay, next up, we pivot back to a discussion on biodiversity and putting nature at the heart of business strategy. For anyone that saw Sir David Attenborough's Extinction documentary on BBC, you would have seen Robert Watson, Professor Emeritus UEA and former chair of the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. He gave a detailed talk and forecast as part of the documentary. Well, I'm pleased to welcome Robert to our event for the next 15 minutes. And Robert is being joined by Terry Slavin, Editor-in-Chief, Sustainable Business at Reuters Events. And they're talking on biodiversity and how business can step up. So over to you, Terry.